The grand corporate lobby gleamed under the glow of crystal chandeliers, every polished surface reflecting wealth and power. The faint aroma of expensive perfume and freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air as executives in tailored suits moved briskly across the marble floor. In the corner stood a glossy black grand piano, more decoration than instrument, its keys untouched for years. CEO Victoria Blake leaned against it casually, her designer heels clicking softly as she shifted her weight. Her lips curved into a teasing smirk as her sharp eyes landed on Daniel, the janitor quietly sweeping near the reception desk. His uniform was simple, a little worn at the edges, and his posture unassuming. She tilted her head, her tone dripping with playful arrogance. "If you can play Chopin, I'll marry you," she said loudly enough for nearby staff to hear. A ripple of laughter passed among them. Not mocking, but the kind that comes when everyone assumes the challenge is impossible. After all, Daniel was the janitor, the man who emptied trash bins and polished floors, not someone who belonged behind the ivory keys of a concert piano. Daniel didn't laugh. He didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he paused mid-sweep, resting the broom against the wall. Without a single word, he started walking toward the piano, his footsteps slow and steady, as if every stride carried a secret only he knew. By the time he pulled out the bench and sat down, the entire lobby had fallen silent. Coach Miller wasn't about to let the moment go. He bounced the basketball with a loud, taunting rhythm, each thud seeming to challenge Jake more than the words themselves. "Come on, janitor," he said, his grin widening. "Let's make it interesting. I'll give you $100 if you sink it from half court. Easy money unless you're scared." The players burst into laughter, a couple of them even cupping their hands around their mouths to amplify their jeers. Ethan's small voice cut through the noise, trembling but determined. "Dad, you can do it." His eyes were wide with hope, and that was enough for Jake to set the mop against the wall. With slow, deliberate steps, he walked to the ball rack. The gym seemed to shrink around him, the sounds fading into a dull hum. He reached for a scuffed, old leather ball, its grip worn from years of use. The moment his fingers pressed into its familiar grooves, something stirred inside him. Muscle memory from years long gone, from a version of himself no one here knew existed. The laughter quieted to murmurs. A couple of players exchanged glances, sensing something was different now. Jake didn't speak. He simply held the ball in both hands for a moment, his eyes distant, as though he were looking at a court from another time and another life. The final chord rang out like the echo of a heartbeat, lingering in the air before dissolving into silence. For a long moment, no one moved. It was as if the entire building had been holding its breath. Daniel's hands slowly left the keys, resting on his lap, and he exhaled quietly, almost as if waking from a dream. The first sound that broke the silence was the soft click of Victoria's heels against the marble as she stepped forward. Her usual commanding stride was gone. Instead, her movements were slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. She stopped just a few feet from him, her gaze studying his face, as though trying to read a language she'd never known existed. "Where did you learn to play like that?" she asked, her voice stripped of the sharpness it carried earlier. It was no longer a challenge, no longer a game. It was genuine curiosity, tinged with something she wasn't used to feeling: humility. Daniel looked up at her, his dark eyes calm but distant, carrying a shadow of something unspoken. "My mother taught me," he said quietly. "Before, I had to give it all up." His voice was steady, but beneath it there was a thread of sorrow, like a note held too long. Victoria blinked, taken aback by the simplicity and weight of his answer. In that moment, the janitor she'd barely noticed in passing was no longer just a background figure in her corporate empire. He was a man who had lived, lost, and carried beauty inside him despite it all. Around them, the onlookers slowly began to stir, whispering in hushed tones. But Victoria barely noticed. She was still standing there, caught between admiration and a quiet guilt she didn't fully understand, while Daniel simply returned to his seat and folded his hands as though nothing extraordinary had just happened. Coach Miller blinked a few times, as if replaying the shot in his mind to make sure it had really happened. His hand fumbled into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled $100 bill. For the first time all afternoon, his voice lacked swagger. Here you go," he muttered, holding the bill out. Jake didn't snatch it or gloat. Instead, he took it calmly, offering a small nod before slipping it into his pocket. The players, still buzzing from what they'd just witnessed, swarmed around him. "Where'd you learn that?" one asked, eyes wide. "Do it again," another shouted, grinning. Jake chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Let's just say, I played a little before life took me somewhere else." His voice was even, but there was a hint of something deeper there, a story untold, hidden in the lines of his face. Ethan ran up, practically bouncing with excitement. Jake ruffled his son's hair, and they started walking toward the exit together. Behind them, whispers spread through the gym. To most of these people, Jake had just been the janitor, someone who swept the floors while they chased dreams. But now, they were looking at him differently. As the heavy gym doors swung shut behind father and son, Ethan grinned up at him. "I always knew you could do it." Jake smiled back, his voice warm. "That's all that matters, kiddo."